Welcome to ACX University. I'm Emily Kern, and I'm here with author Jill Bankson. She's the best-selling author of the Cake series. She writes contemporary romance novels with strong, quirky heroines focused on love, humor, passion, and family set under the glittering lights of the West Coast entertainment industry. In just a few short years, Jill went from being a romance fan herself to the self-published author of 5 best-selling romance novels, gaining a devoted fan following in the romance community in the process. Today, she's here to talk with us about how she engages with her fans to build community and why they are essential to her success. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you for having me.
You had a somewhat unconventional road to becoming a successful and very well-known writer within the romance community. Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to write your first novel and how it was received?
Sure. I was reading a lot of romance novels, and I read this one, Rockstar Romance, and afterwards I was just so upset because I didn't end the way I wanted it to. The middle, everything was just wrong, and I kept thinking, if I could just write one, this is what I would do. And I kept thinking about it for a couple of days, and finally, I'm just going to write it myself. And so I did. I ended up writing this novel, and I didn't tell my husband, I didn't tell my kids, I didn't tell anybody. And when it was done, I loved it so much. I'm like, I want somebody to know, but I can't tell anybody because I hadn't said anything to anyone. So I researched Amazon, and I put it out on Kindle Unlimited, and then I watched it, and every day I would get a little bit more reads, and then it started selling, and then within the first month it was an all-star. It was a best-selling novel within the first month of coming out.
Whoa.
And I still had not told anybody. So then I was thinking, okay, now I have to figure out how I'm going to tell my husband, because I was a stay-at-home mom for 21 years. I have no paycheck, and all of a sudden, money is going to start depositing into our account, and I did not know how to tell my husband. So I actually ended up having to sit him down and tell him, and I had never once said that I wanted to be an author because I never wanted to be.
So how did your husband and your kids react when you told them that, surprise, you are now a best-selling romance novelist?
It took me about 6 weeks to tell my husband. And I had told him, I said, can I talk to you? And here's the thing. When I was writing my story, I was on my computer all the time, and I wasn't really paying attention. He would talk to me, and I wasn't really paying attention. Mm-hmm. And he was noticing it, and he was annoyed by the whole thing, but I wasn't telling him I'm just on the computer. I'm on the computer, and I didn't want to tell him anything that was happening because I was embarrassed because I didn't, it was just for fun. It was just for me, and I didn't want to tell anybody. So I was keeping it quiet. So I told him, I really need to talk to you. And it's about 6 weeks later, and he's like, okay. And so I said, let's go out to breakfast. And he's like, okay. And so we sat down, and I told him, and he was like, oh my God, I thought you were having an affair. He was absolutely shocked. So then I told my kids, and my kids ran to Amazon, and they looked it up, and they're like, you are such a liar. And I'm like, no, look. And they looked, and they were like, oh my God, everybody. My parents shot everybody that knows me. You just think of the one person that you would never think would write a book and do this, and that would be me. And so all my friends and my family, they've just been shocked. And they're still shocked, as they see my success along the way. They're like, wow, this is just amazing.
Yeah. Have you had anyone come to you and say that they were inspired to write their own book or tell their own story because of what you did?
Oh yeah, I've had quite a few people. In fact, one of my very best friends just called me the other day, and she's like, I just want to get a little bit of information about how to publish a book. I'm like, oh, you're thinking about doing it? She goes, oh yeah, I just wrote an erotica story. I'm like, wow, good job, girl. That's pretty funny.
That's so great.
Yeah, and I said, did you tell your husband? She goes, oh yeah, he's editing it for me. I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should have told my husband. And my husband's actually now writing a novel. He's writing a thriller. It wasn't until I became an author that I realized how many people have secret desires to write. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting that lots of people have told me that.
Oh, I love this. You've inspired this groundswell of independent writers. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really fun.
So do you know anything about how those first fans came to find your book in the first place?
I don't know, but I think, when you put it onto Kindle Unlimited, people who've never read you, don't know who you are, they can give you a chance. And I think that's what they did. They saw my homemade cover with no editing. I have no idea why they would even have picked up my book, but maybe the blurb, something about it, the description of what the book was about, caught their attention, and they read it. And so with me, it was all word of mouth. And so one person would read it, they'd tell somebody else, and it just went like that. Because I did not do any advertising, no marketing, no nothing, for probably 2 years.
That's pretty incredible. You said that you started this journey by being a reader of romance novels.
Yes.
And so it may be that you just picked up on certain tropes in romance novels that you liked as a romance fan already. So you're already sort of in tune with and paying attention to popular romance tropes that you may not even have been aware that you knew.
Yeah, and when I wrote Cake, a Love Story, I wrote everything I had ever wanted to read in a romance, because I didn't think I was ever going to write another book. It was just for myself, it was just for fun. So everything I'd ever wanted to read went into my book. And it's kind of funny because I think maybe a lot of people wanted to read the same things, but they hadn't been able to find it in a book in a long time.
So your fans start reaching out to you.
Yes.
How do you begin engaging with those first fans? How are they contacting you and how are you talking with them?
Well, because of the unconventional way that I started this, most authors, when they start, they're much smarter than me. They have their social media in place. They have everything. Well, I didn't, because I didn't know. And I was hiding who I was and everything. So it took me a while to figure out that I needed to have a place for my readers to go. And I did not know this at the time. And so what I was doing was, if somebody would email me or something, I would respond, but I didn't have really a place for them to go. So I ended up getting everything in place in about 6 to 8 months.
And everything, you mean an author Facebook page, a newsletter?
Yes, my website came probably about 2 years after I started, so that was a while. And then I have a funny thing. I have a group called the Banana Binder, and the way that started is I have a fan that had told me, he said, you need to get a fan group. And I'm like, I am not starting my own fan group. I cannot do that. That's ridiculous. And he goes, no, that's how they do it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody's going to join a group that I put for myself. That just sounds really bad. But I followed his advice because he said everybody's doing it. And I picked the stupidest name I could possibly because it has something to do with my book. And I figured if somebody was looking for me, they would know what it means. Surprisingly, people have been finding it. And there's another thing. I don't advertise the thing. So people just come to me after they've found the book.
Well, I have to ask, what is the significance of the phrase banana binder?
Well, what it is in the actual story, because I'm writing about a rock star, and one of the things I hate about romance novels is that these rock stars, they just meet a girl and she's beautiful and then they fall in love. And so that was one thing I wanted to show why he would fall in love with her, and she was kind of a quirky girl. And one of the things when they were having their first conversations, they were confessing things about themselves, and she told him that she used to collect little stickers on bananas. And so they were talking about it, and then she goes, and then I had got so many of them that I put them into a banana binder, and he was shocked because she actually had a banana binder. And so that's where the whole thing comes from.
Oh, that's so cute. I love that. So how are you engaging with your fans then on the platforms that you now have for fan engagement? Starting with, I guess, your regular Facebook page, how often do you post to your author Facebook page, and how do you engage with fans there?
Well, there is mostly just, I'll do a post about something funny or something that's going on, or if I have author friends, I'll put things about their releases. But my fan group, the Banana Binder, I don't do any kind of advertisement. That's one thing I don't want to do with that, because that's just a place where we can just interact together. And so I'll put something funny. If I have a conversation with one of my kids, I'll put the text message thing that goes through there. Right now, for example, there's a banana festival. And I can tell you right now, I'm not a huge geek about bananas. Now everybody sends me banana stuff. I've got banana everything. But I wasn't a big banana fan before. Now I am. But there's a banana festival in our area, and I've been trying to get my son to go with me, my 24-year-old son, and he refuses. And so everybody in my group thinks it's hysterical because I keep trying to get him to come, and he refuses. And now he's like going out of town this weekend, so he can't go to the, just things that they can see me as a normal person. Yeah. And we interact that way, and people put things on. And so I never really have to worry about always having something going because other people post into the group. Okay,
so with that group, it's a little bit more about just genuine engagement, almost like the way you would engage with a group of friends on Facebook.
Exactly. And I feel like they're my friends, which is really funny because I know that with the whole social media thing now, you can be friends with people you've never met. And I actually have quite a few friends that I've never met before, but I really consider them to be friends. So.
Yeah. And that's sort of the bright side of social media is that it allows us to connect with people we wouldn't ordinarily connect with.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of about how many fans are in your fan group in the Banana Binder?
I just hit 1,900, and it's been less than 2 years.
Wow. Yeah. That's quite a few.
But one of the things that I don't do is I don't give any incentives to join, because I feel like that's the place that I really want people to just come if they really are fans and they want to come in and So I don't, run any kind of promotions or anything for them to come into my group.
So what about blogs? Do you have relationships with bloggers, or do you interact with anyone in the blogging community to get the word out about your book?
I have not, actually. That's one of the areas that I've never really been able to connect with, and I don't know if maybe my story is a little bit different than what most bloggers are looking for. So I've always had a little bit of an issue trying to connect with bloggers in that way. But I do have bloggers who find me just naturally, and when they do that, then I have a great relationship with them. But it's just kind of trying to find people who might be interested and to talk about my book. It's not as easy as...
So really the word of mouth that you get out about your book is from, it isn't from connecting with bloggers whose job it is to promote the book. It's really word of mouth that's coming from fans who are doing it because they love the books.
Right.
And they're promoting it of their own accord.
Right.
So do you have any sense of like how your fans are getting the word out about new releases? And do you kind of rely on your fans to get the word out about new books? I
really do. And I don't really have an ARC team. I don't have a street team, none of that kind of thing. But my fans are, for example, there's different Facebook groups, and they'll ask, what would be a good, funny family story? And then they'll put my book on there. And so just that's a big promotion. It's big word of mouth. I never ask anybody to do that. They just do. And so that has been a big help for me.
Yeah, and I would imagine that some of that comes from, again, having that really genuine connection with them, that they know you, and so you're top of their mind, but also they're motivated to sort of promote their books because they do have this personal engagement with you.
Well, and also, I just got back from a book signing cruise, and I sat with some of my readers. Every night at dinner, I would sit with them. And at one point, she turns to me and she goes, I feel like I'm sitting with the McAllister family. Because, as we talked, some of our stories, there were things that I have written in some of my books. And the way we interacted. So I think also they feel like they're part of the family. That's one of the things with the Cake series, is that a lot of people feel like they're a part of it, and they're very invested in the characters. And so I think that's one of the reasons why. It's not just because they like me, they like the characters. And that's why they're recommending it.
I'm sort of starting to get the full picture here. It's like they become really invested in the characters, and because your books, you're saying, are so much of a reflection of really your experiences, that there's a lot of you in your books, that connecting with you personally almost feels like an extension of the novels, like getting to connect further with that world. I could see how that would be like a really good experience for a fan.
Yeah.
So speaking of the book cruise, how often do you have the opportunity to engage with your fans in person? I know you said that there are a lot of fans on this fan group that you feel like are friends that you haven't met. But do you have opportunities to meet with some of them in person, and how does that go?
Yeah, actually yesterday when I came into New Jersey, I had a group of my readers that came and met me at the restaurant, and we sat and had dinner together, and it was just really nice. I like to interact that way, and we just had a great conversation, just like, as friends, and I wanted to do that more often. I know when I came off of the cruise, after spending time with readers there, I had somebody waiting for me at the pier, and she had all her books, and so, I met with her there, and it was really fun. So, and I'm a very extroverted person, so I enjoy that fan interaction, and I enjoy talking to people, and it's just icing on the cake for me to be able to write books that people enjoy and that makes them smile or makes them cry or whatever, but then at the end of the day that they can see me as a friendly, nice person, and that we can interact as friends, and that's really what I wanted to do with the group, and what has actually happened with our group.
I don't know, it sounds to me like you do have a marketing strategy. It's just
sort of, I think
it's playing to your strength, which is being an extroverted person anyway, and if you have this natural rapport with your fans, why not use it?
Right. Well, it was really interesting. I'm wearing this little bracelet here.
I was going to ask about that.
And what was funny is I was trying to find something that if I met my fans, it would be a fun time to give them something. And so I said, if I'm either signing or if we go someplace, just tell me that you're from the Banana Binder and I will give you one of these things. And I thought, it's like cheapy little thing. I got so many emails and everyone was like, oh, I can't get to one. Is there any way you can send me these? I was shocked because I'm thinking it is just like a little plastic thing. But it was really cool. And so I was sitting them around, but this is like a big deal. People are waiting, to meet me so they can get one of these,
Yeah.
which I think is really fun. So this is a little marketing strategy here.
Yeah, it is. It's like belonging to like a little club. I don't know.
Exactly.
I mean, this sounds, to me at least, like a pretty hefty time commitment. And I know that for a lot of people, it would seem like a lot to get on every day and engage with fans and talk with people. And, it's no small commitment to have that ongoing connection with your fans. How do you work that into your writing and the business of being a writer and a self-published author? How do you sort of juggle those two things? And then your life.
In the
also.
beginning, it was very difficult because I had come from being a stay-at-home mom for 21 years. I hadn't had a job, and so all of a sudden, I have all of these things happening at the same time. And I've learned to, try to learn a little bit of everything, because if I had done it earlier in life, maybe it would have been different. But right now, I think I want to experience everything I can. I want to learn as much as I can. And so I just make time for everything. But I feel like interacting with my fans really isn't a chore for me at all. It's fun, and it actually gives me, if I'm trying to work out a scene or something, it gives me a chance to just relax for a minute and laugh. Or, a lot of times there's a lot of banana things go on, and I think that's really funny. They'll have bananas in suits, and so it gives me a little chance to laugh. It does help me a lot when I'm writing.
It's really great that you're able to balance all of that. And it sounds like, especially the one-on-one time is a real gift to your fans, but it seems like this is a good, beneficial, sort of reciprocal relationship for both sides.
Actually, I feel like they give me more than I give them. And I think that maybe they feel the same way. They like that I'm on there interacting with them. And I've been told many times, it's just like talking to a friend. And for me, it really helps, like I said, just to put me in the right frame of mind. Sometimes if I've had a bad day or something, I go on there and it just really helps me, and then I can go back and write. And so it's been they help me a lot more than they think.
From your side, you're saying you're getting more out of it, but I think from the fan side, I could see. Yeah. I mean, that would be huge for me to get to talk to one of my favorite authors.
It's funny, I tell my kids sometimes, they'll say, oh yeah, my readers in my reader group, they think I'm really cool. And they're like, oh, Mom, nobody thinks you're cool. And I'm like, yeah, in the banana binder, they think I'm really cool.
And we have these cool bracelets, and we're part of a secret club.
In what world are you cool, Mom?
Well, I mean, it sounds really like what you're doing here is building community. It seems like that would be, maybe a more sustainable method of getting interest in your books and getting the word out there than, hiring someone to do marketing for your book or getting bloggers to write about it. Have you found that this community of fans that you've built is really like a sustainable, I mean, I know it's only been 3 years, but does it feel like you're seeing sort of sustainable results in your book sales from this?
I think so, yeah, because the word of mouth continues. And of course, I am not saying that I don't do advertising, because I do marketing and that. But for me, I think because my first book was a best-selling novel, it obviously helped me, so I don't have to do as much advertising as maybe somebody who didn't have that big push at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And Cake has continued to sell really well after 3 years. So, especially in audio, I mean, I would never consider releasing a book without audio and trying to get it as close as I can to the audio. Because for me, which is a very interesting thing, I have about 60% of my readers are actually listeners from Audible.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is there a lot of overlap between your readers or listeners, or are they sort of distinct groups?
I don't think so. I actually think that because I don't think I have a lot of whisper sync, mm-hmm. Which is when a reader will pick up the audio as well. I think mostly my audience, the listeners, actually are most of them are exclusively Audible.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes sense why you would time the two as close as possible, your print release and your audio release, to make sure that you're sort of paying equal attention to both groups of fans.
Absolutely. And I do think there is an actual difference between the readers and the listeners. And I think a lot of times the listeners get pushed aside a little bit because everything's about ebook, everything's about getting it out there right away. And I think sometimes the listeners feel a little left out. And so I really try to engage with that group as much much as I can, especially because I have about 60% of my audience is from Audible. So, we do a lot of discussing about narrators, and they have actually helped me a lot. Which kind of the narrators they like. And so, I make a little list. In my last book, Rogue Wave, I actually used a male narrator that was recommended to me from some of my fans that enjoyed his voice and thought he would be perfect for my character, and he actually was perfect for the character.
That's so neat. And you mentioned earlier that the narrator for your first book, Andy Arndt, came from a fan recommendation too, right?
Yes, and I had no idea because I'd never listened to an audiobook before at that time. I had no idea who she was. I didn't know she was popular. And so she told me about her, and I looked her up and I listened to her, and I'm like, oh, I love her voice, and she would be perfect. So I just emailed her. I had no idea that you don't do that. And I just emailed her, and luckily she was like, she checked out Cake, and she's like, yeah, I'll do it. When the book came out, or the audiobook came out, she put it on one of the blog sites, and it just started rolling, and within 10 days, Audible saw that it was moving, and they put a big banner on the, and I have to say, this is for a brand new author that I didn't have any connection with Audible at all, but they saw that my book was moving and I had some good narrators, and they put a banner that said Smash Debut. And it was at the top of the romance page on Audible, and it just took off from there. It just took off. And I was just sitting there, just like it did on Amazon. I just sat there watching it just rise. And so it was, I don't know if I'm just lucky or if this book somehow has spoken to readers and listeners. I don't know what it is. But
I think it can be both. I think it can be
but
both.
But it can happen for an author just like me who is just an unknown. And suddenly, something takes off like that. And with Cake, it happened twice for me, so it was pretty cool.
That's so neat. Well, speaking of which, for an author like you who is maybe an unknown, who's just getting started, maybe someone who hasn't even started yet, but feels like they have a story to tell and they want to get it out there, what sort of advice would you give to a new author or someone who's maybe just breaking into audio?
Well, I would definitely get your social media in place, which I did not do, and try to network and find out as much as you can about what you're going to be doing, and also find out what's popular, what people want, but write what story really speaks to you. And I think that was my main thing, is that I wanted to write a story that really, something I would really like to read, and I think most authors do that, but sometimes you get kind of caught up in the whole, I've got to do it this way, I've got to write this kind of story because that's the type of story everyone wants to read right now. And I purposely went the opposite way with Cake because all the stories to me seemed like they were going a certain way, and I wanted a story from my youth when I used to read romance. I hadn't read those kind of stories in so long. And so that's where I wanted Cake to go, in that old, a little bit maybe old-fashioned way that isn't as popular anymore. And apparently I hit a nerve because a lot of people like that. So if you can find something like that maybe you've read, that you've really enjoyed, and you don't see it around that much, then, just really write what you love. And I think that really resonates with the listeners and the readers.
Yeah, it sounds like the big takeaway here, or the big takeaway that I'm getting from this, is authenticity. And that, if you're writing authentically and you're engaging with your fans authentically, fans can sense that, and readers and listeners can sense that, and that's a place where you can really find success as an author.
Yes.
So you mentioned you didn't have social media channels really when you started, apart from your personal Facebook page. Now that you're doing all this engagement with fans, which channels do you have and how do you use them?
Well, I have the standard. I have my newsletter, a website that people can come in and see, and they can read. They can also get books there. And my website also has a dedicated audiobook, because I want to make sure that I interact with my audio fans. And so there's places where they can listen to a sample, and they can see if they're interested in listening to that book. But I think the thing that I do quite a bit is I get a lot of emails, and I try to answer as many of the emails as I can.
Oh, wow.
And it's funny because the people will say, I just can't believe you email me back. I'm like, why wouldn't I? What else do I have to do? No. But I do that, and personal messages. So I really try to interact and answer as much as I can. Sometimes it takes me a couple of weeks, but I will get to it.
Yeah, well, sure.
When they come in, I flag them, and I try to make sure that I get back to them.
Oh, that's so neat. What kinds of things are fans asking you in these emails? I'm curious.
Most of the time, they're asking me when my next book's coming out. But a lot of times, they just say, sometimes people will ask me, why did you do this in the book, or have you thought about writing about this character or something? So yeah, it's mostly just about the character, or thanking me for writing the stories. So they're always really nice,
Oh, nice. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Jill, thank you so much for coming in and taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you. It was really fun.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of ACX University on engaging with your fans and building authentic relationships that we hope will support your work for years to come. We hope what you learned here makes building your fan community a piece of cake. Speaking of which, be sure to check out Jay Bankston's Cake series on Audible. I'm Emily Curran. This has been ACX University, and we'll see you next time.